Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of HitLab's Women Health Tech Wednesday. Thank you again for joining us today. I am your host today. My name is Vandana Yadav. I work with the HitLab as Assistant Director for Research. Before we get started, I would like to make a couple of announcements. The deadline for applications for the Breakthrough Alliance Challenge is October 15th. And another challenge called the Versailles Challenge has its deadline on October 28th. More information about both these challenges will be listed in the chat box for your reference. Also, I would like to remind you that our Fall Innovators Summit is coming on December 2nd to 4th in person at Microsoft Tech Center in New York City, and we would really love to see you all there. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest for today, Unika Alexander, the co-founder and CEO of the Proficient Lab. Hi, Unika.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm great, and it's lovely to have you on today's program. I would, love to ask you a little bit about your background, a little bit about your journey, and what inspired you to co-found the Proficient Lab.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's a mouthful of questions. So my name, like I said, like has been said, is Unika Alexander, and I am by trade a clinical scientist. My journey started a long time ago. And basically, when I did my undergrad, I did an undergrad in biology. And once I graduated, I found myself not knowing what to do with that degree. So what that led me to do is figure out what was needed in the industry, and that led me to clinical laboratory science. And from there, I did my undergrad in Florida, then decided to come back to New York to get my license as a scientist. And I did that. And as my career path kind of just blossomed, I slowly started getting into operations and management in that space. And I found that I started being a leader in the space, being hired to open labs, being hired to basically ensure that operations were efficient at laboratories. And I found that I kept on doing the same thing over and over and over, like getting in there. How are people performing? How are instruments performing? How are we controlling the processes? And through that, I decided that I would create a platform so that these repeatable processes wouldn't be so cumbersome each time it's needed. Initially, I thought, maybe I should be a consultant, but you can't scale consultancy. So that really led me to build a platform that allows labs to control their processes through quality and compliance management. And that is the short story of my version of my journey.
Well, that's awesome. And since you experienced a lot of first-hand laboratory operations and you observed, the hiccups, the gaps. So,
Mhm.
based on where you are right now and what you have observed so far, what is your vision for future of knowledge sharing in the laboratory and life sciences sector?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So right now, I think the biggest issue is that processes, knowledge sharing, and compliance, it's very compartmentalized. Even within one organization, you find that different laboratories have compartmentalized information because the information is either in the head of the manager, the supervisor, or the director. But trying to extract that knowledge and being able to disseminate it in a consistent way that's repeatable, that is where the issues, and that is what we see that's the space that we see ourselves filling, being able to provide a scalable platform, and not just within an organization, but between organizations, so that knowledge could be shared globally. So if there is a process or something that needs to be repeated, whether it's research or whether it's actual patient testing, that can be done in a consistent manner globally. And that's our vision for how we want to support this industry with standardization.
Well, that's fantastic. Um, and beyond knowledge sharing, like what are other types of some unique challenges within health tech or within laboratories that you think the platform is addressing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So two of the big things that this platform is addressing is compliance and quality management. So knowledge sharing is kind of like the underbelly of I guess quality, because you have your subject matter expert who understands the regulations, who understands how to interpret it in that specific space, and being able to repeat that over and over is what's going to drive quality, and being able to do that in a consistent way. And compliance is basically the what's the word I'm looking for? The end product of having a process, a quality process. So that's two things that we really think that we're able to help with, like being able to lead the user scientists through the proper compliance endpoint, and all in there ensuring that quality is accounted for, because quality eventually ultimately leads to safety, and that's what we're all about, the safety of what we're doing in the laboratory, so that the end user, which is the customers, which is the patients, which is, that's the people who need to ensure that the safety of their results, of their processes, are being done appropriately in the back end. So that's where we see ourselves helping out.
Awesome. And you mentioned about compliance, and we all understand how important that is within, any sort of research or life science or laboratories. So how exactly does your platform facilitate compliance with regulations in the life science industry?
Yeah, that's so another good question. So the way we've built our platform is that we've accounted for different regulatory bodies. So we've accounted for different aspects of FDA compliance, different aspects of the CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid. And because we built the framework that's compliant, it really takes the burden off of the end users to remember those specific compliance requirements, because the platform has provided a framework that requests input that fit into what the compliance needs to, what type of compliance needs to be performed.
Mm-hmm.
I
That
hope
makes
that answered the question.
No, you did, you
Yeah.
did. And I'm sure that, in the process of development, you would be approaching your users as well, taking feedback. So, in your perspective, what key features of the platform you think are most beneficial, in the life science community, or is well perceived by the community?
Yeah. So it's interesting because the features that we thought would be most beneficial have, it's been a mixed bag. So it depends on what the goal of the laboratory is and what their struggles are. We find that some laboratories really need to have a structured training platform, or really structured training program, because before us, it's been a matter of checkboxes. And at the end of the day, you can't really get into the details of a checkbox. So that's been really helpful, so that when someone new comes in, they do understand what their journey is from A to Z. And that sort of creates a hybrid model for the individual who needs to train them, because the instructions, the process of getting trained is right in front of that new user. So they really could be more independent and proactive about how they're going about training. Other things that labs have found very helpful is the skill assessment or competency aspect of our platform, because that is one of the top citations in all labs in the US, is that, that individuals there's just no evidence that they are compliant. So, and there are very strict rules in terms of when this is done and how it's done and what needs to be accounted for. So it gets very cumbersome as you have more and more employees that you need to do this for. So our platform, because it automates the whole process, it really has given some labs the bandwidth to manage these processes in an easy way. So that's been extremely helpful. We've even found like our meeting management aspect of the platform has been extremely helpful to ensure that, when things are discussed, it doesn't fall into nowhere. There is a follow-up. There was a meeting, who's responsible for this? Is it resolved? Is there follow-up that needs to be done? That's been very helpful. And outside of the features of the platform, some of the functionality that's been really helpful is the ability to scale. That's been extremely important, because we've had customers who have quite a number of laboratories around, in different states in the US. and being able to have individuals in one location appropriately assess the compliance and the quality of other locations. That's been a huge benefit, being able to accurately say this is what's being done in 1,000 miles away. That's been a huge benefit to the individuals who are on our platform.
Super, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in this journey, you would also have encountered some challenges, whether it's about at the development stage or maybe when you're trying to scale the platform. So
Mhm.
what were those challenges and how have you overcome them?
Oh my goodness, one day at a time, honestly. Like the challenges are one day at a time. There's always a challenge. I think one thing that we try not to fall into is, you put your work out there and all of a sudden everyone has an idea and everyone wants something to be tweaked specifically for them. So as much as we pride ourselves on listening to the needs of our users, because that's how improvements happen, right? Is listening to what's needed and iterating and acting on it. I do think that there is a point where you need to pace yourself and say, hey, okay, we can't take the suggestions of every single person because at the end of the day, we're building for a wider community, not just for one specific need. So it's been, a little bit of a challenge understanding like when to say yes and when to say no. But thankfully, I'm a people person, so I'm able to address that in a very cordial way.
Well, I'm sure you handle it pretty well. Um,
Good.
in general, when we talk about the life science industry or health tech industry, it's almost like walking on a fine line, balancing the interest of all stakeholders as far as
Yes.
possible. So, in your experience, like what strategies you use to ensure that the platform remains inclusive and accessible to all users?
Yeah, so I think my unique experience has given me the advantage of understanding what different users need. So because my journey started off at the bench, I really do understand. I've been on the bench, I have been a manager, I have been in operations, I have been a director. So I really started from like I've done the full cycle of what it means to be in that type of space. So thankfully, I'm able to understand the needs of different individuals, but I also surround myself by the individuals, whether it's the end user or the decision makers or the people who need to manage the process. I definitely ensure that my network is full of these people. I definitely ensure that we get the perspectives of different individuals. So sometimes we have someone who may reach out to us, say, hey, this platform's amazing. I'm not a decision maker. I just think it's interesting. And we take those very seriously. We say, hey, like, can you come and just get a demo and as an end user, tell us what your opinion is? No specific requirements of you. And even things like that have been extremely useful to get feedback and to just be inclusive of everyone's experience on the platform.
Wow. Well, I can totally imagine like people do detailed user research, but you have actually been at those roles, different use cases that the platform is catering to. So we can imagine how thorough the build-up will be, understanding all types of user perspectives. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since we were talking of inclusion, so as a woman in leadership role, how do you encourage diversity and inclusion within your team?
Well, as a Black woman founder, I definitely, so it's funny that if you look at my team, we're very much diverse. We're kind of like I wouldn't say we're like the United Nations just yet, but we definitely have a diverse, thing going on in terms of, gender, in terms of race. And I think it just stems from my core beliefs in ensuring that I represent for underrepresented individuals. I can't even explain. It's just my team has just evolved into who I'm with, who I'm next to, and who could actually do the job. So as much as my team is diverse, we definitely have the individuals who are capable of doing the job. So
Well, that's
yeah.
cool. And you definitely come across as I would say, a very driven, strong, and passionate woman. So how do you empower women in your organization, like, or even the wider community?
Well, so I use my knowledge to help my peers grow. And, I have individuals that I speak to, and I mention that, let's find the right way to get something done. And this really isn't for being at the Proficient Lab or for specifically what I need, but this is for what comes next, whether you're with us or whether you're not with us. This is how, this is what's expected in, a career as you move forward. So I definitely look at things that way. I try not to look at what would benefit myself or the company at this very point in time. But I also, every time I speak with someone, especially a woman, I try to provide input that would take them beyond just what they're doing now. I try to provide input that would take them through their career beyond what they're doing right now. And that's always my perspective, is how are you going to develop as a person? So that's what it's my mindset for these types of things.
That's super amazing, inspiring. Um, and we all are witnessing from within the industry how health tech is changing. Some, sectors seeing the growth that they have never seen, or to the scale that they have never seen before. So, what sort of trends within women health technology do you find most exciting right now?
Within health technology, well, so I think the AI bubble is gone. The AI craze is gone. I think right now we have a lot of regulatory changes that are happening, and that may not be the most exciting thing to talk about, but it's happening. We see regulatory changes happening because of safety concerns. We see regulatory changes happening because different organizations feel like, they would better manage a specific process. And I think this is really exciting because it's creating a lot of opportunity for the health tech space to just fill in gaps based on why the regulations are changing. So that's been super exciting. And I think a lot of these changes are going to drive business for us. So I'm excited about that.
That's so true, absolutely. As
Yeah.
more and more changes are coming across in the digital health sector, it's getting more sophisticated. The regulations are also getting complicated, and so the need for compliance is getting increased. And Proficient Health, perfectly fits in there. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
that's awesome. And how do you see the role of technology evolving the future of women's health in particular?
So I think the good thing is that now we have more women in positions to have a seat at the table, right? So as we have all of these new technologies happening, there's definitely the women's perspective coming in, because if we're not at the seat, if we don't have a seat at the table or we're not speaking up at the table, then as technology evolves, then our needs are not being met. So I feel so proud when I see that there are all these new innovative things happening, but the needs of women are being accounted for. So that's been extremely exciting, and I see it every day with new startups happening specifically for, whether it's things pertaining to menstruation or, new products pertaining to just very much women focused. So for instance, just on a personal note, like I just recently had a mammogram. And now there's all types of AI imaging to help, with better detection. So all of these things are only possible because women now have a seat at the table, and now we're able to say, well, this type of technology could benefit us. So let's innovate in that direction. So that's my take on that. I think it's amazing what's happening right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's super exciting. And I really wish that this kind of inclusion also happens in things like, clinical trial representation, right? There was a
Yeah.
time everything was being tested on white males, and then, it is administered to every individual in the globe. So
Yeah.
if that scenario can improve, I hope, like, just how the professional lab is doing in laboratory processes, there could be something similar for clinical trial compliance.
Yeah.
That would be, pretty exciting to see, and the promise and potential is huge.
Yeah.
Which
Absolutely.
right, which makes me think, like, what are your plans for expanding the Proficient Labs capabilities in the next few years?
It's funny that you said what you just said before. So right now, I'm a because we started in, the medical laboratory space, we are very much there to ensure there is, quality management as well as quality assurance, right? But when we look at clinical trials, specifically phase 2 and phase 3, where you're out of the ideation stage and you're really trying to bring this into operations, this is where we see a huge opportunity for us. So this is where our next move is going to be, getting into those spaces, because it's not too far of a vertical for us to use our current processes, with obviously just a little more, more development on that side, but we already have the framework to get into there. And I think that is really, really, really exciting. And we're already, talking with subject matter experts and just laying the groundwork to get there.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
superb. I'm really looking forward to see the new changes and developments.
Yes.
And are there any, any upcoming features or initiatives that you're particularly excited about?
Yes, so I'm pretty excited about our quality assurance aspect. So we think of in right now we have about 14 billion tests being run every year in the US. And the fact of the matter is that 70% of all medical decisions depend on laboratory tests. So right now we are very much focused on ensuring that the quality and compliance aspect of the individuals are accounted for. The individuals, their documentation, are they trained? Can they actually give you safe results? But another piece of that is quality assurance as it relates to the instruments, because we've moved from an environment where, individuals are running manual assays. Most of our assays are run on instruments. So there's a full circle going on there. We could ensure that the individuals are compliant, but if we can't ensure that the instruments are compliant, then we have a break in the chain there, and vice versa. So we're really excited to have a full circle compliance platform, and that includes getting quality assurance for the instruments up and running. So that I'm very excited about. And this is basically, validation, verification of these types of instruments. So that is extremely exciting, and we're actively working to push that out.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And being a CEO in this fast-paced industry, how do you maintain a work-life balance?
I try just one day at a time, honestly. So I have two kids. I have a 4-year-old and I have an 8-year-old, and they are a handful. Thankfully, I do have a partner who is extremely understanding of the journey, extremely understanding of the mission. So, he's able to step in whenever I need to go network, or I need to, grab a meeting at an odd time on a Saturday. So that's been extremely helpful. So just one day at a time. I do think that there is something to be said about, having balance and giving yourself room to decompress, giving yourself room to just for self-care without feeling guilty about it. Because, my grandmother, so I'm originally from the Caribbean, and my grandmother had this weird saying that an empty sack can't stand. So if you're empty, whether it's, nourishment or mentally, like you just can't get yourself to do what you need to do. So as much as it's a lot of work, like, you hear this talks about, being a founder, being a CEO, being a startup CEO is hard. It's hard. Like it's a lot. But finding that balance, it's just something that's a really personal journey for everyone. And for me, I would say I'm still navigating through it, but for now I'm taking it one day at a time, and I'm able to execute, which is important, because, doing anything halfway is just not my style. But I am able to find a balance enough where I could execute on what needs to be done. I'm not neglecting my kids, not neglecting my family, but that all comes with support. From my partner, from my in-laws, from my immediate family. So I do have a network around me that understands exactly what the journey is, and they're willing to help. And I honestly don't know how I would do it without them. So
Well, thank you. You beautifully articulated that. I genuinely believe that women are not born with inherent multitasking capabilities, but I would say they were definitely subjected to such expectations that, they have
Yes.
to handle this, that. And I've heard so many stories where motherhood actually, transforms women, right? They grow patient, they grow like children are all-time projects, so they understand about
Yeah.
pushing them and how it is important. But
Mhm.
what's very important that you mentioned is how we have to care about ourselves also. How we have to, just make sure that we have enough energy to push it through and to be able to deliver what we plan to deliver or what we are subjected to deliver. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. And that just brings us to the last question for the session. What advice would you like to give to aspiring women entrepreneurs in the health tech space?
What? Okay. Don't get discouraged. There are lots of stats out there, and don't ignore the stats because they are what they are. Data doesn't lie, but don't get discouraged by those stats. Like, be true to your mission. If you have an idea, you believe in your idea, just go out there and, do what it takes to bring it to fruition. Meet people. It takes a village, honestly. Like, I couldn't do any of this by myself. I'm not just talking about like my family, but just extended Hit Lab. Like, Hit Lab's part of my village now, which is awesome. So just stay true to what you need to do. Don't be discouraged. Seek advice from people who have done it before, because at least that kind of allows you to put your journey in perspective. So the days that you're feeling down, you could kind of relate to the fact that every day isn't a good day. So that's my advice. Just, stay true to your journey, keep pushing, and build a village around you.
Thank you so much, Anika. That was incredibly helpful. It was amazing to have you on today's session. A
Thank
huge
you.
thanks again. Also, I would like to extend a very heart, I'm very grateful to all our guests for the event today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you all this time next week. If there are any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box or email us. We would love to get back to you. Thank you, everyone.